You can't even check his value on Zoopla. That's Josh Howie. And yet you both look remarkably well with your chosen trajectories through life.
Thank you so much.
I've been off with the China virus. The China virus.
But he's back.
I'm back. Yeah. Feeling a bit weird. It's kind of weird, isn't it, when you're off for a bit?
I think you've overestimated the impact it's had on you.
Really?
Yeah, I've hardly noticed any...
I feel detached from the quotidian vicissitudes of the workplace.
Wow. Well, that's something I wouldn't have heard you say before. So
I've changed
it sounds like it's enhanced your vocabulary. Anyway, let's have a look at the front pages. The Daily Mail kick us off with shut down and a picture of Stuart Broad congratulating his child there. The Telegraph, lockdown harmed nearly half of all children, as well as our very own Nick Dixon. The Eye, as AI weapons will pose risk to humanity. That story rumbles on. Broad delivers fairy tale finale there. We'll be covering that shortly. The Guardian, dismay as Prime Minister vows to max out UK fossil fuel reserves. The Daily Express, banks warned you can't rip off savers anymore. The bank's getting it in the chops from all directions at the moment. And the Daily Star, finally, I'm keeping hold of my chopper. That is, of course, Rishi Sunak. Well, those were your front pages. So we will kick off with The Guardian, Josh.
Yeah, dismay as PM vows to max out UK fossil fuel reserves. So we knew this was coming. He announced it this morning, and critics of this policy are saying that this could have a wrecking ball through climate commitments, because it's not that individually it would make that much of a difference, but the idea is that we blinked first in the West.
Right.
We reached a little bit of pain,
yeah.
And suddenly we're like, oh, you know what, forget it all, it was a bad idea. And then the other Western countries would take note, and then also that would sort of go down the economic hill.
And do you feel that that's plausible, that America, for instance, might take our lead from that?
No, I think they've got a different economic policy, or they've gone much further. So I think a lot of they've invested a huge amount of money in the whole renewables thing. The only thing that I would say about this is that I wish that there was more confirmation about where the money was going to be going or where the profits were. And I would argue that to put it towards renewables or nuclear would make more sense, because then if that would lower the parts of the energy bills that we pay that go on these green taxes, then I think people could really get behind it. If you could see oh yeah, we're going to use this money now that's made to then help us out for the future, that makes sense to me anyway.
What do you think, Nick? I mean, they are obviously there's a sense that the government want to remain in power is the main issue, isn't it?
That's what I took from it. Yeah, it's a smart move in that sense. He's realised we might want to get elected, and these things are very unpopular. Net zero, I suspect, is very unpopular. People are starting to realise the cost of it. You know it's unpopular because even Tony Blair has piped up and said, hang on, guys, we're not sure about this climate thing. And he suggested that actually we have a minimal impact on climate compared to China, etc. And what we could actually do is contribute with our financial services to funding it in the developing world would be actually a better use of our resources.
And make some money.
Well, yeah. But if even Blair's saying that, I mean, I say even Blair, but he tends to know what's going to win elections.
Yes.
And I think people are realising this is very unpopular.
It is interesting, isn't it, how it's been spun, I suppose, is the obvious thing. We had people talking about the extent to which Sadiq Khan was forced into measures that had proved unpopular by Grant Shapps and so on, and everyone's trying to pass the buck about it. Nobody really wants to take ownership of it anymore. What was once a kind of like a flagship, like a knight in shining armour type policy is now being passed and has turned into a hot potato.
Imagine being forced into something by Grant Shapps. So
but also everybody trying to outdo each other.
Yes.
And that seemed to be the way that it was going. There's also an interesting article here. Farage, Coots offering to reopen my accounts. So this is like a sort of across-the-board win for him, really.
Yeah.
But he's saying, no, I wanted a full apology, and I want some money, and I want to meet you face-to-face. I go, oi, swear.
We're not aiming for the truck.
Yeah, but by the way, I admired your article.
Thank you.
In spite about, I 100% agree with you. The way that comics in particular have sort of reacted just because they don't like...
And the left, generally. I suppose I particularly register it when it's people...
Did you also
read
like
my
that?
article a few days before, Simon. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Sure,
Let's
really
have a look
good.
at the... what have we got? The Mail, Nick.
The Mail have shut down, which is about themselves. It's after Mail's expose of corrupt migration lawyers. Solicitors Watchdog closes 3 firms, bans another legal advisor, and launches inspection of entire sector. So Mail very much giving themselves credit, but it is shocking shocking. I mean, it's these solicitors, I'm sure you've heard of the story. One of them, they talked about asylum seekers or migrants should well, people pretending to be asylum seekers should invent horrific backstories of torture, beatings, and slave labour and so on. And one of them said, "Look, it'll cost you $5.5 grand. Normally that'd cost you 12K, mate." Sort of dodgy kind of
deals. So they're being schooled basically in how to play the system. That's
and legally helped through it, not just advice, but like they were like offering to get doctors' prescriptions for PTSD and.
Because you always see there's the Good Law Project, aren't there? Who do a certain amount, and there are a number of high-profile lawyers on Twitter and so on who've attached their name to the idea that they will challenge the Rwanda plan, and just as they challenged whether Brexit was legal or not. There's always a lower tier, isn't there, where there's just people who are like the ambulance chasers of the immigration sort of world, I suppose.
The hustlers.
Yeah, and this is what the legal ecosystem is full of. You know, for every somebody who's possibly trying to identify a genuine loophole in the system that needs tightening up, there's just like rats pouring through it.
I did like one of the firms said, we entirely refute the allegations. However, we have commenced an internal investigation.
Yeah. And you can get this service for 5K.
Now, do we want to use this paper to discuss Stuart Broad? Because that really was an extraordinary ending to his Ashes career.
This is tennis, right?
Yeah. Anyone fit to discuss it? Or
Wrong
does it
guy, I'm afraid. My dad forced me to watch cricket, but I've not watched it as an adult.
Broad and Anderson, this will probably be their last Ashes, probably their last test, and they've been like the greatest partnership of England bowling statistically we've ever had. But Broad in particular is a real swashbuckler. He finished his innings with a 6 and then finished his career bowling out to the last 2 Australian wickets, and it is a tremendous.
So now don't come back, basically.
Yeah, he cannot come back after that.
But off the back of that again.
And hopefully he's addressing. You can see the picture there on the front. He's talking to Molly King and daughter Annabella. Now, of course, there was a time when Annabella would have been regarded as, you know, a dead end, but conceivably she might actually go on because he is the second generation. Stuart, he had a father who played.
I see. Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about there.
For a second. It was weird. Yeah. You're not into cricket. You know what's changed since my youth? Yeah. You wouldn't get a girl from like the Saturdays. She's from the Saturdays, right? You, as a cricketer in the past, footballers might. But when did cricketers get to that status? Do you know what I mean?
I think cricket's having a bit of a moment. I think it's coming back, and I've been discussing this casually with friends in something that might get me cancelled. But I have a view that demographic changes are changing the nature of sporting prominence around the world. Like in America, I think the reason that soccer is becoming a viable sport for them now is that there's so much immigration from Central and South America, where football is considered to be, you know, a perfectly viable sport. They used to prefer gridiron and baseball, but now they've got significant populations who actually regard football as a men's sport. And in this country, because we've had a lot of South Asian immigration, cricket, which was a few years ago looking a little bit wobbly, I think is actually starting to come back a bit. But it's also because Ben Stokes has reignited the excitement of the game with his approach to it.
That's one of your least controversial things.
Well, you braced for something much worse than that. Turns out it's pro-immigration.
I'm just traumatised by how you said soccer.
Soccer. The Telegraph next. What have we got here, Josh?
Oh, yeah, this is my favourite bugbear. Lockdown harmed nearly half of children. You know what? They've done this headline a few times in various iterations, and I don't care, because every time I read it, I get furious and angry. A new survey came out today. By the way, this is teachers have said, yeah, we'll accept the 6.5% and we'll stop striking and maybe actually give your children an education, which is appreciated. And but it wasn't appreciated when they were one of the unions calling for all these lockdowns at the time, and it just turns out that yes, it was actually the damage was greater than was previously being conceded by the government. And it's just incredibly frustrating because I still see it within my own kids today.
Is it a particular age, do you think, that were damaged badly?
I think particularly young children, and speaking from my family, which were from baby up to teenager, it was the one who was sort of in year 2, so kind of 6, 7 at the time, because that was a very critical 2 years of school, and we're still playing catch up. And
you're a family which, you know, however much I might like to tease you about it, you are pretty well educated. You are a bookish family. You know, it's kids who live in homes where books and education is not regarded as a priority.
Well, we're comic books.
Yeah, that's true. And ball games, but at least some kind of intellectual stimulation. Imagine kids who were living with Nick. You know, if that would have been the case.
It's tough.
You're going to let them out one day.
Biblical lectures. I mean, and the thing from the headline, half of parents have said that children were more easily worried lost confidence and had worsening tantrums. So, yeah, it's hard to quantify, but it seems that parents have noticed a worsening effect on mental health.
Well, we'll never know for sure, of course, because every child is so individual and unique that it is always impossible. You might have 3 children, you might go, well, that one had schooling and that one didn't, but, you know, they are so very different. But the accumulative effect is clearly measurable. 1 drink a day increases blood pressure as well, Josh. Can't discount that possibility as well, I suppose.
Yes, there was more than 1 drink a day during lockdown as well.
Certainly. I always had that thing about going back to the pub in October 2020 and seeing how large a measure of whiskey was actually supposed to be.
I know, it was crazy. And also just like all the excuses you needed to go through the door.
Anyway, listen, we're running out of time. Is there any need to go to the Daily Star, Rishi, in a chopper?
Well, just very briefly, I'm keeping hold of my chopper, but it's quite strange because it's based on the interview with Good Morning Scotland, it seems to me, where he was talking about his private jet, not his chopper. And Rishi was, I thought, quite sensibly saying, I need my jet, I'm the Prime Minister. Yeah. They were just trying to shame him because they only had 5 minutes to get their gotcha.
It's tiresome, isn't it? The cult of personality in reverse. Anyway, those are the front pages all sorted. Come back in a second for A&E bonuses, GP life coaches and illicit virus labs. Are they all linked? We'll see you shortly.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, still here with Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. So let us continue with the story. And Josh, we have good news for savers in the Telegraph. The Financial Conduct Authority is going to shame stingy banks.
Yeah, banks pass on less than 30% of interest rate rises to savers, the FCA finds, which is kind of incredible because obviously they're It's not like it works the other way around.
No.
Like, they're not, if you've got a mortgage or whatever.
Sorry, we have to put it up.
Yeah, sorry, that's it. And it's just like with petrol as well. It's like, it's like quick to go up, slow to go down, whatever the equivalent is here.
Sticky, ratcheting.
So the idea is it's going to shame these institutions, but I think people kind of know what's going on. And I think... Ultimately, I think it's 23% of people have changed their accounts over recently.
Have they?
In the last 6 months,
encouraging.
which actually is much more than I thought.
Yeah.
I haven't. I'm aware that I'm getting totally shafted. And because we've been saving money to do the loft, so there is actually a tiny bit of money in there.
Right.
That I should be moving it. And I wonder, even knowing how badly we're being shafted or on what scale, are we really going to do anything about it?
I mean, the truth is, until a year ago, no one was offering any interest at all, were they, anywhere? And so you kind of got into the habit of not bothering about that, really. If you had a few quid, if you'd had a good month or whatever, you know, you just went, oh, well, I'll just leave it where it is. But now I suppose it does actually pay dividends to move it about.
Yeah, it's shocking. I'm starting to think banks aren't the moral paragons we all once thought in the last few weeks. I mean, the Bank of England has set this deadline, as the FT put it, for them to justify these interest rates rather than actually change them. That was my concern. They just set their justifying team on it. So the FCA is going to clamp down if they don't do something about it, because they've got this mandatory fair outcomes thing, this new customer duty. So they've got to do something about it. But will they? I mean, it's a quarter of the Bank of England increases have been passed on to the customer, so it's shocking. I mean,
I would imagine there's probably like some of the smaller, do building societies even exist anymore? They all went sort of probably. There's a few of them. Those are the ones often that offer the best rates, aren't they?
That's
like quite independent, you know. And the big ones, the big banks and the big sort of brands that can spend loads of money on having a high-profile celebrity on their web page whenever you log on. You know, they're the ones who don't seem to bother giving you a decent deal.
I think the thing is how easy is it to actually move your account? And I think people have got used now to mobile phones, and that's why the rates have got so low, because you just literally send a text and you get a thing and you put it in and that's it. And then you've got a new thing. But whether that would work with banks, of course, there's a lot more.
Well, let's hope that we can bring to bear moral pressure on these swine. More bad news for banks. Nick, in iNews with the aftershocks of Farage-gate now resonating throughout the sex work industry.
Yeah, interesting. The way your emphasis was strange there. I'd have gone throughout the sex work industry, but you were like throughout, like
I know. It was a deliberate.
Okay, sorry to explain your jokes. So, banks under pressure over closure of accounts of sex industry workers. And as you say, Farage has started this. He could essentially free hundreds of prostitutes here to be, in a sense.
He's like the Schindler of OnlyFans.
Yeah, because, you know, the idea here is, look, it's probably illegal to shut down their bank accounts just because the bank doesn't approve it. I suppose my overall note would be, it'd be nice to have a Christian society where everyone wasn't a sex worker. But in this degenerate society, I wouldn't put it down to the banks to be the moral arbiters. If it's legal, then presumably you should have a bank account.
Well, I mean, a lot of people would say that prostitution and banking are fairly closely allied, aren't they, to, I suppose, to an extent. I don't know. I mean, it never occurred to me that there might be any kind of moral decision-making, but we're all having to assess this now.
Can I say one joke? I'll say, I suppose both a bank and a prostitute show you low interest rates. That's all. That's it. Sorry, kind of ruined because I had to stop you. Sorry, carry on.
I don't know how they found out. They use an example in here of someone who running these legal sex parties, and they had £20,000 and their bank account was closed. And I was like, how did the bank... Was there someone there from the bank who was like, wait a minute, this is not right?
Did the money come in smelling vaguely of perfume or detergent?
Yeah, so I don't know how you would identify someone. It's also interesting then using the term, because this is the iNews, which is slightly woke, I don't like that term, but and sex worker is a very contentious term in and of itself. But the point is that people need bank accounts. It's a utility now.
Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it? It's why it's hotting up, because there is also... I don't think we're covering it tonight, but did you see Piers Corbyn having a moment in Aldi or somewhere, you know, refusing to...
Yeah. One time he's right. Cash. It's so painful when someone you can't stand.
The person you know just made a good point.
Well, I mean, he is a crank, but sometimes it takes a crank, isn't it? I mean, who else is going to be bothered to make a point with 50p's worth of strawberries?
Well, who also has got that change lying around?
Yeah. It was £1.19, Simon, how dare you?
I met him once at an Oxford Union debate, and he gave me his business card, and it was literally scissored off of the corner of an A4 with it.
I saw him on the tube the other day, pretty humble, still using the tube.
You too as well.
Yeah, there you go.
One day the third Corbyn brother will emerge, and that's when it'll all really kick off. Anyway, we have apparently bribes to clear hospital queues by any means possible. Not necessarily the way to go, according to the Telegraph.
No, I don't think so. Paying hospitals to clear A&E queues risks patient safety, says medical chief. Really, the whole point is they should clear the queues or keep to the allocated times and whatnot, because that's their job. Yeah. The idea that they get this bonus and there's this pot of like 150 million that they can access because they are doing their job seems somewhat ridiculous, but more than that, it's been pointed out by the president of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. He's like the top dude, and he basically said, "Look, they're going to prioritise the wrong people. If they're desperate to meet these targets, they're going to sort of quickly get rid of the people who they can easily get rid of. Yeah, and it's going to be the wrong incentive." What's also interesting is I just want to say that it turns out the government have launched 10,000 virtual beds, and they're really proud of this. Wow! And it's like, why not just launch 1 million virtual beds?
Where do these virtual beds exist?
Yeah, exactly.
Are they just online? Are they like quantum?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, look, everybody said this is the new way of
they
dealing
exist,
with
but you can only know their location or their
Schrodinger's beds or whatever.
How very, very extraordinary. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose this is the kind of important and urgent, matrix again, isn't it? So they will deal with the cases that they can get rid of quickly but aren't necessarily important, but they can be seen as urgent. A bit like when you've got lots of things to do, so you tidy your sock drawer.
Nice. Yeah, I like the idea of sort of brutal competition, merit and incentives, but obviously, these are perverse incentives because they don't want to get someone who's going to take too long, and they'll say things like, "Oh, we've got a lingerer or something." Yeah. They'll be out, don't even want to look at them.
Yeah. Well, funny you mention lingerers because this is what the next story is about, isn't it? The way to clear the backlog. The backlog is life coaches, or are they just throwing the long-term sick under the bus? Nick, there's the joke there.
Yeah, it's GPs will be urged to send patients to see life coaches instead of signing them off sick. So it's a strange position where you'll get unemployed people sent to see another unemployed person, which is a life coach. Yeah. But it's not a terrible idea. It's a bit of a strange one. Like, what are your goals? Well, not working. But I suppose it's life coaches are always looking for clients. It's not a terrible idea. You'll say these people are because they're trying to get everyone back into work, and if it's a psychological issue that isn't really.
Well, I remember, I've seen, we've had, over the last, 20 years of marriage and kids and so on, occasionally the GP will refer you to people who might give you psychological advice or therapy or whatever rather than medication, And life coaching is usually part of their remit anyway. Do you know what I mean? If somebody's offering CBT or something like that, then they will usually have a range of skills, and they're often like adding a new one every 6 months anyway to sort of big it up, aren't they? Whatever is the latest. So in a way, is it really that kind of different to just kind of going, oh, there's somebody who's been off sick for a long time, there's nothing really wrong with them, maybe they need somebody to talk to?
I guess so. I mean, the government's just desperate to get these people back into work. There's 2.5 million Brits off work. And this is this idea of bringing in these fit notes, which is where you're kind of physically fit. Yeah. You need the extra push. But I don't know. I find it hard to listen to a life coach because I'd be like, you're a life coach.
You're a life coach.
Was that who told you to be a life coach?
In that jacket, you kind of could be one.
Hey, get a job, kids.
Where do you see yourself 10 years ago? Daily Mail now, Josh. Tonight's dystopian nightmare story begins in an unassuming abandoned warehouse in California.
I know, it's an X-Files episode.
Yeah.
Unassuming warehouse in California turns out to be an illegal Chinese-run virus laboratory that was genetically engineering mice and experimenting with HIV, herpes and malaria.
Wow.
Woo!
That's a triple jab.
And they found it out because someone had left the hose outside the door. And some busybody council member or whatever walked past and went, "Oh, there shouldn't be a hose." And they checked it out, and then that got them access. And they suddenly found all these vials and whatnot. They found these mice, some of them still alive, and they're trying to track it down. It's a Chinese guy.
Some of these mice still alive. That's the big thing. Oh my God, these mice.
We didn't kill them all.
Barely alive.
they did have AIDS.
But there were 1,000 inhumanely stored mice, 200 of which were dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's
My favourite part is that the company was called Prestige Biotech. Just hundreds of just dead and semi-dead mice.
Global prestige.
Welcome to Prestige Biotech. Never mind that, it throws a mouse.
But they don't know what they were sort of using it for.
Wow.
And that's the crazy bit. And this guy has sort of disappeared, and lots of shell companies and whatnot I mean, it sounds like from the headline there could be China's got some illicit thing going on.
It's not a good sign if they found this one randomly. A place like the size of California, there could be quite a few of these, couldn't there? And I really think they needed to do a proper clean-up. It feels like there should be regular checks.
Come on, Chinese secret services.
This is also how I got COVID, by the way. I supplied the mice.
We've made it halfway. Come back after this central break where we dig deep for Mr. Italy, hidden library books and white chefs. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. It should be a drier day tomorrow, and many places will see some brighter, even sunny spells. Still quite breezy, however, and not particularly warm. And behind me, there's another area of low pressure lurking for Wednesday. This one brought the wet weather for much of the country today. Still fairly soggy out there this evening. Some heavy showers in places, staying pretty damp across eastern and southern Scotland through the night. But further south, many places will see some lengthy, clear spells, and across northern Scotland, where it's been dry for most of the day. Of course, the far north, at least, it'll stay dry overnight. Temperatures dropping to about 13 or 14 Celsius. On to Tuesday, and as I said, a drier day. It doesn't mean completely dry. Still a few showers, certainly initially across the southwest, and quite a grey morning over northwest England with some outbreaks of rain. And they'll only slowly ease off through the day. So it will be quite damp here. Parts of southern Scotland seeing some showers, north of Northern Ireland. But as I said, for many, it'll be a drier, brighter day. Still a lot of cloud, but a bit of blue sky. We'll see temperatures getting into the low 20s across the south, high teens further north. But then that next low comes in during Tuesday evening into the southwest. And look at this, a spell of heavy rain coming in, blustery showers following on behind, unseasonably windy again along the south coast of England. So a wet spell coming in through the middle part of the week with, again, temperatures below average for the time of year. Bye for now.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. Nick, further evidence that the rapture is surely nigh as the Telegraph has a Labour-run council trying to turn 14-year-olds into worse divas than they already are.
Yeah, this is Labour-run council sponsors 5-day drag camp for children. This is a queer not-for-profit, not surprised there's no profit involved, called Tart Productions, Tart. Quite shockingly, and it's about being a diva, being a drag queen, and boundary pushing. It doesn't say what kind of boundaries. Perhaps the boundaries of age might be one of them. You can learn to lip sync, which is an important skill to learn. And they claim to provide age-appropriate insight into the world of drag. But 14, which is where it starts, is not age-appropriate. Why is a Labour council doing this? Why is anyone doing this? Very dodgy. It's the same council that banned meat and dairy products at all of internal events in March. So it's a slippery slope.
They mentioned that a couple of times, didn't they? This is the Telegraph, but it's like, you don't normally this horrible council because they also banned.
I mean, I suppose it does show that they were they have been seized, they've been captured by ideologues because it was quite unpopular with their local constituency. It is largely a sort of farming area, isn't it? And there were quite a lot of. But this does feel a little bit more provocative.
Yes, I mean, look, Oxford is what we would call a captured council in that way, right? Ideology-wise, but yeah, this whole money to bring in the Tart organisation for 14-year-old kids, and
I mean, I suppose you can choose whether you send your kid on one of these things.
Yeah, but if it's free, you're just like, you know what? I'm desperate to get rid of the kids. Yeah. See you later, Frank. Come back. Not. But I like how they also said they learn also track editing. Yeah. Because with the drag, you have to. So there's some technical skills you could argue maybe.
Track editing, lip syncing.
Lip syncing.
Why does that take 5 days to learn how to lip sync?
Well, it's the history of drag as well.
The rich history of drag.
So they're going to watch season 1 of drag show, whatever it is. And
the real oldest profession in the world.
But yeah, we've said it before. The point about drag is, and I used to host a drag night. It is fun. It's fun. It's entertaining.
But it
ain't
is
for
sexual.
Kids.
It is sexual.
Yeah, that's what it is. Twerking and innuendo and all the other stuff.
I'm shocked you used to host a drag night. Would you host a 5-day drag camp for children?
How much are they offering?
I mean, what is your price, John? All your rhetoric about the trans movement, you'd be exposed in The Guardian.
Yeah.
GB News presenter runs secret drag camp.
That's why I got this jacket.
Times now, Josh. I remember when Barbarossa was a proper invasion, but now it's a trans bloke trying to enter a beauty competition.
That's it. This is a great story, actually. Trans men apply for Miss Italy in protest at born female rule. So this was after Miss Netherlands was a trans woman last month. And so the head of Miss Italy said, you know what, you've got to be born a woman to compete. So a trans man, a biological woman who now thinks that they're a man, has said, we're going to enter as well to make a point. And then 100 other Italian trans men have also applied. But it's like, well, that's fine because you are a biological woman. So apply. And actually challenge these gender norms of beauty contests and whatnot with your beard, with your hairy legs and whatever. Why not? Is the point. But the point they think that they think that they're making this big protest when actually all they're doing is reinforcing the binary that they are actually a woman.
What they've done, they've cleverly got around the born female thing, but they haven't got around the be good looking thing. Because the other part about beauty contest is that you have to be beautiful, and that's the incredibly... They're trying to, like, they're talking about inclusivity. Beauty contests are famously exclusive. They exclude almost everyone, and in a very brutal way by saying you're too ugly, and that's the point of them. So this idea, like, hey, we've got around this. It's like, yeah, but if you're someone that's spent their life trying to look like a man, chances are you won't win a female beauty contest. Am I a hater for saying
You look a bit like a trans man.
How dare you?
But that's a compliment because it means you're good looking.
Thank
you
you
could be a
much.
woman, but who's had a lot of testosterone.
They've been thrown. This has been thrown up by the Dutch. The Dutch have got a trans Miss Holland now, or Miss Netherlands, or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's what kickstarted the whole thing. Yeah.
And then there's another one. But now, so you're saying that to protest against restrictions against that happening.
Yeah.
Natural-born
women
who have transitioned to become men are entering this competition.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, obviously, they're just not going to make it because they're not attractive.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, maybe.
Is that
they're
the
female, because this competition said you have to be female. So they go, well, look, we are. It's like, yes, but you're not going to be in it anyway. But
well, they're saying that some of the women have got through to the next round, and I think certainly challenging ideas of beauty and
but they don't identify as women anymore.
Well, that's what's so ridiculous is they're going. They think they're making this amazing point, but really they're saying I'm still a woman.
They're flipping back. One of them's even applied under their dead name, and normally you can't use.
By the way, their dead name.
Now because they're
it's great. This is a great thing about being Italian because their real name, their birth name was Federica, and now they've just gone to Federico. So, like, that's the blessing of being an Italian trans person. Easy.
More Labour council malarkey, Nick, in the Telegraph. Unwelcome gender-critical books have been tucked.
Yes, shocking stuff. So gender-critical books hidden by tin pot censor librarians, and this is Calderdale Council, and of course it's a Labour council, and also got some previous, which the councillor faced calls to resign after speaking at a pro-Palestine rally supporting a wanted terrorist. You know how you do.
Yeah.
So classic Labour, and now what's happened is they've been hiding the books at the library, but if you look into it, they're not hidden. You can get them, but you have to sort of request them, a bit like porn, like an old porn VHS or something. So following consideration of a formal grievance internally, a number of titles were placed in the lending store. So they've just been shoved out to the lending store where you can find them if you ask.
They are total. And when you read which books these are the most high-profile, well-respected universities.
Absolutely. Trans, Material,
Joyce
Girls,
and Stock and Abigail Schreier.
Yeah.
I know it's anecdotal, but I have taken to checking Waterstones on this as
me
well.
too, I did.
And they don't stock them, or they don't put them on the shelf.
They put them in the stock room.
They have like a big shelf of gender and issues and stuff, right?
You can find the Antifa handbook though in Waterstones in North London, Crouch.
And in Brighton, I mean, where I live in Brighton, that is Kathleen Stock's old university, and that's when I first went there to try and get the book and see why she'd been hounded out of the university, and they didn't stock it, even in the town where the actual controversy was going on.
And Waterstones keep on saying, no, we're not holding it back, we're not holding it back. But the fact that libraries, which are publicly funded, are holding back, is ridiculous. It's not, it's
a demonstration that there is any other side to the argument at all. Josh, we stay with current year madness and a story in the Daily Mail, the worst white supremacist in Notting Hill since Richard Curtis, by the sound of it.
Yeah, gosh. Trendy Notting Hill restaurant boss sparks diversity row by sharing Instagram photo of his all-white, all-male team of chefs. He's blasted on social media for total unrepresentative lineup. So this is a famous chef. I'm not a massive foodie, but the point is, I know from watching The Bear that it's a tough job, and I've read Anthony Bourdain's book as well.
Yeah.
And it's all about, have you got the skills or not?
Yeah.
If it happens to be that these 7 people in the photo are the most have the best skills for the job,
and maybe some work as a coherent unit. I mean,
but that's what some of these people are criticism.
I suppose the idea that one projects that onto them because they all look the same.
Well, this is the thing: there's some genuinely, I believe, also racist intonations here, because someone is saying that, they're all the same background and whatever, they all think the same. It's like, you know what? All white men, believe it or not, aren't all the same.
No.
They might come from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, different socio-economic backgrounds, different sexualities.
I know it's a tiresome thing to say because we're always forced into it, but if there were 7 black blokes outside a restaurant, nobody would flag that up.
Or 7 women, or 7...
They would go, oh, isn't that great? Isn't that marvellous? There's this kind of, this community have come together to make it...
Yeah, we've internalised the idea that white people, especially white men, in a predominantly white country, is a problem. Someone even calls it here a cultural problem. Why is it a problem? And that is an inherently racist assumption, obviously. And we've tricked ourselves into loathing our own culture and believing we have to sort of... We can't have white men. Completely absurd, obviously.
I bet people are still eating there, though. This is the Guardian, just to close this section out now. And what else? Hate speech, the Centre for Countering Digital Hate, which sounds a bit swivel-eyed.
Yeah, I thought it's an Elon Musk story. I thought we were going to talk about how he's messaged the leader of South Africa, accusing him of covering up white genocide. But this is something else. This is Antihate speech group accuses Elon Musk ex-court of intimidation over legal threat. So, like you say, it's a Centre for Countering Digital Hate, which seems to be some sort of nonsense group. Like you get stop funding hate and all. Usually, when they have hate in them, it's usually a sign that they're nonsense. Yeah. And they're saying that Musk is trying to intimidate them into not. Well, you can probably explain it better.
No, but I mean, there is an element of hypocrisy here, in that he's all Mr. Free Speech, and he's trying to shut down legally this group that are basically pointing out that arguably...
I mean, there's always that. Whenever you talk about free speech, there's always ways in which there's kind of ironies because you're not allowing somebody to say that you're not allowed to say what you're allowed to say. But it does sound to me like... I mean, he has loosened the cat flap a little bit on Twitter. There is more hate speech on there. Some of it I see that I think, well, that's a bit strong and you wouldn't have seen it before. But then on the other hand, I know for a fact there were people on there before who were being silenced who had perfectly legitimate opinions. So I think it is a necessary... You do always have that thing. How strong a filter do you have? Yeah. And previously they had a very biased filter, unquestionably, and now they have a slightly looser flap.
Yeah, but as you say, anecdotally, I'm seeing some crazy stuff on there. Yeah. And then also he's now letting Kanye West back, and he's just done actual hate speech. I mean, you know...
What do you believe in hate speech as a concept?
Well,
I
think saying I'm going to go DEFCON on Jews is pretty bad.
Well, I mean, it was, but I think it was... listen, that's a tired old thing.
Interesting question. Would you rather Kanye not on there, just thinking that at home? I don't know.
It's just because he's got more followers than there are Jewish people. That's where it gets dangerous. And when you have Jewish people being shot up in supermarkets in New York and whatnot and killed for being Jewish by black supremacists or whatever, then there's an issue. Anyway, whatever.
We will have to see how that pans out. Final breather now, but the last section has some doozies. It is Bear Man, Dog Man and Incel Man. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Josh, we have the Times now. Chinese zoo crowds are unhappy with one of the exhibit's bare bottom.
Indeed, yes. Chinese zoo denies bear is a human in costume. And if you see the photo from it, it's standing up on it's a sun bear, originally from Malaysia. There it is. And you can see it's got a saggy bottom. And it does look like a bloke wearing a bear suit.
I know the bloke that does this.
That is suspicious.
Yeah, that is suspicious. But they pointed out that it's 40 degrees, and if someone was in a bear suit, they would basically die.
Well, why doesn't the bear die then?
Well, the most suspicious part, though, can I tell you the most suspicious part is that in a separate post, speaking in the bear's voice, the zoo said, some people think I stand like a person. It seems you don't understand me very well, but you're talking, so you're a person,
So you think that's the definitive proof?
Well,
Yeah, they've given it away. Terrible.
More evidence, they've been accused of, other ones have been accused of dyeing dogs to look like wolves, painting donkeys to look like zebras, and a golden retriever in a cage that was marked as an African lion. So with this precedent, it's very hard not to believe that's a blow.
I would not pay to go to a... Actually, I think Chinese zoos, maybe that's the future. Maybe when all these animals die out, that's what the zoos will be. Will be, you know, people, as they hear, people dressed in gorillas and whatnot.
Out-of-work theatre students.
Actually, we do know this was a human because it sat down on a rock in a resigned fashion, plus it has been debanked by all major banks. That's how we know.
I really want to see with a fag hanging out of its mouth. That would be the decisive factor for me. Anyway, back to the Mail, Nick, and incredibly, a man who has spent over 10 grand on a costume so he can pretend to be an English collie is getting some online mockery.
Yeah, this is weird. I've seen this story before, but it's always even more disturbing. It's a Japanese man who spent $12,000, turned himself into a dog, and now he's having to go at the trolls who are making his life hard. And he says he's being bullied online. Now, to be fair, sometimes bullying is right, because this guy, you picture sort of one of those weird people who pretend to be...
Oh, here he is.
Here he is. But this is actually an extremely realistic costume.
It is
still
good.
very disturbing.
Yeah.
There's one where he tries to do tricks around the house, but it looks like a kind of early video game because he moves so stiffly to try and do...
It's slightly heartbreaking.
You
can see he's very stiff.
Does he have... He must have the aroma, mustn't he? If he wants to persuade other dogs, he's going to have the pheromones. I don't know whether they spray him with something beforehand.
But this has been a lifelong ambition. He actually wrote about it in his school yearbook. He was like, I want to be a dog.
Wow.
So...
And that particular dog... That's Lassie, basically.
I guess so maybe you can have lots of different costumes, but there's obviously a whole fetish, isn't there?
Slightly odd the way he walks. I guess his knees are tucked up to his chest.
You just see him try and pick up a tree. It all falls apart. The facade falls apart.
What's that, Lassie?
Yeah.
You see how the other dog is moving much more nimbly because it's real.
Yeah, but he hasn't revealed his true identity yet. He says that the people in his life might think he's a bit weird.
Oh,
strangely.
So he has people who are close to him who don't know that that's who he is.
Yeah, he's got work colleagues and whatnot. And
wow. So how is he getting bullied online, then, if people don't know who he is?
Well, just the fact that we're calling him out as a bloody freak.
Just people like us,
You freaky rolling freak.
Self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
OK. Considerably sadder manifestations of mental instability now, Josh. A non-isolated case of isolation in the Telegraph.
Well, this is also Japan. How Japan is tackling
hikikomori.
Oh, hikikomori.
Probably.
A syndrome that created a generation of recluses. They've got a real issue there of people 18 to 25 in particularly, and this is a writer who's sort of talking about his life. He lived with his grandma, and she just was a survivor of World War II, and basically said, "Your face is doing my head in," whatever, and that sent him in a downward spiral. And he spent years just in his bedroom, and he said he only felt alive when he went to the toilet. I know that feeling.
Wow.
And but he finally got out of it. But this is the steps that the central government and local councils are taking to get people out of their homes, because it can lead to suicide and
But do we think this is like a particularly... It's got a Japanese name. Is there a suggestion it's a particular Japanese malaise in some ways?
It's been going on for a few years. They kind of started... It's kind of like the start of incels and stuff, but they were there first. But what's worrying to me is that what's the actual solution? They're launching metaverse social events. It's kind of like different levels of nerdishness. Like they're actually... Mostly the metaverse is a retreat, but for them it's actually an expansion.
So that metaverse putting on VR goggles and remaining still in his home, but having a sort of avatar of himself.
Yeah, but some of them then would come out into the real world.
Yeah.
So you've got to start somewhere.
What is it about Japanese culture that encourages this sort of thing? Do we know? Is there any sense of...
What, people dressing up as dogs?
Well, there's just generally... There's a lot of social dysfunction of a certain kind, isn't there, of them not feeling very physically connected with the world.
Yeah, it seems to be linked to sort of high neurosis and strict social structures.
Yeah.
I mean, I relate to a lot. I mean, I look at Japan, you know, have you seen their toilets? They're incredibly complex. They've got sounds and kind of... Anyway, it's a long story.
We've got 1 minute left to cover the Daily Mail, and a cohort we've mocked in the past, but with heavy metal, it sounds like the Swedish variation is a bit darker.
Yeah, so it's similar. It's a Swedish author going on the cover in the incel community, involuntary celibates, of course. And as usual with the mainstream media, they get it all wrong. They just want to demonise incels and say they're sort of evil white men. But no, with a lot of them, do you know, the majority of them are left-wing. Did you know that? And a majority aren't white. So it's a kind of... They only take the ones who go completely mad and attack some people who obviously are
Even
bad.
in Sweden.
But a lot of it, mainly it's just sad.
Well, but it seems like extremely misogynist, the culture.
Yeah. But they don't look at the
But he will
causes
have
of it. They don't look at the
highlighted the
causes.
extreme ones, as you say. This is the thing. He's got a book to write, and so you get a bad impression. A lot of these people are probably just trying to connect with
They're
other
just
guys.
struggling. They're just people who can't get girlfriends and are very sad, most of them.
Okay.
Is it a function of the sexual revolution, or
that's what? Yeah, there's the Pareto distribution of the dating market. There's feminism. There's economic causes. All sorts of things.
Well, the show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail with shutdown. The Telegraph, lockdown harmed nearly half of children, and Stuart Broad. The AI weapons will pose a risk to humanity, and Stuart Broad. The Guardian, dismay as Prime Minister vows to max out UK fossil fuel reserves, and Stuart Broad. The Daily Express, banks warned you can't rip off savers anymore, and Stuart Broad. The Daily Star, I'm keeping hold of my chopper, Rishi Sunak. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. We're back tomorrow at 11 p.m. Andrew Doyle will be in the chair hosted Josh Howie and Leo Kearse. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. I will be seeing you in about a month's time when I get back from Edinburgh. All the best. Good night.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. It should be a drier day tomorrow, and many places will see some bright or even sunny spells. Still quite breezy, however, and not particularly warm. And behind me, there's another area of low pressure lurking for Wednesday. This one brought the wet weather for much of the country today. Still fairly soggy out there this evening. Some heavy showers in places, staying pretty damp across eastern and southern Scotland through the night. But further south, many places will see some lengthy clear spells, and across northern Scotland, where it's been dry for most of the day. Of course, the far north, at least, it'll stay dry overnight. Temperatures dropping to about 13 or 14 Celsius. On to Tuesday, and as I said, a drier day. It doesn't mean completely dry. Still a few showers, certainly initially across the southwest, and quite a grey morning over northwest England with some outbreaks of rain. And they'll only slowly ease off through the day. So it will be quite damp here. Parts of southern Scotland seeing some showers, north of Northern Ireland. But as I said, for many, it'll be a drier, brighter day. Still a lot of cloud, but a bit of blue sky. We'll see temperatures getting into the low 20s across the south, high teens further north. But then that next low comes in during Tuesday evening into the southwest. And look at this, a spell of heavy rain coming in, blustery showers following on behind, unseasonably windy again along the south coast of England. So a wet spell coming in through the middle part of the week with, again, temperatures below average for the time of year. Bye for now.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by